All right, welcome back to Adolescent Trauma Case Studies. Today we examine one of the most chilling cases in recent American history, the 2015 familicide committed by two brothers in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Now, this case is commonly known in the media as the Bever Family Murders. In this series, however, I will refer to it as the Bever Brothers, not to minimize the harm that occurred, but to shift the focus where prevention truly lives: early development, isolation, belief formation, and adolescent cognition. This episode explores how two teenage brothers progressed from internalized fantasy to externalized action, and what this case reveals about warning signs we still miss today. Before we begin, I want to be clear about the purpose of this video. This is an educational case study focused on adolescent trauma, development, and human behavior. It is not meant to sensationalize violence, assign blame, or justify harm. Some details may be difficult to hear, and viewer discretion is advised. My goal is to understand how trauma, attachment, and development intersect, because understanding is one of the strongest tools we have for prevention. Robert and Michael Bever were two brothers raised in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, in a highly isolated household. They were homeschooled, socially withdrawn, and largely separated from peers, community norms, and external accountability. Their daily world was narrow, defined almost entirely by family, online content, and each other. This context matters. Adolescents do not develop identity in a vacuum. Isolation does not cause violence, but it can intensify distorted belief systems when no corrective voices are present. The household environment plays a critical role in this case. Robert and Michael Bever were raised in a highly isolated, tightly controlled family system. They were homeschooled, which in itself is not harmful, but in this context, homeschooling significantly limited exposure to outside adults, peer relationships, and alternative viewpoints. Their parents were the primary authority figures, educators, and gatekeepers of information. This meant that the belief systems, moral frameworks, and emotional norms were largely shaped within the home, without consistent external challenges or balance. Sibling dynamics also matter here. The brothers did not develop independently, they developed together, reinforcing each other's thoughts, interests, and perspectives. In isolated environments, siblings can become each other's primary mirrors, amplifying ideas rather than questioning them. There is little evidence of regular community engagement, close peer friendships, adult mentors outside the home. This created a closed-loop system where internal narratives went largely unchecked. From a trauma-informed perspective, this isn't about blaming parents or homeschooling. It's about understanding how restricted environments reduce early detections. When adolescents lack multiple relational anchors, warning signs are easier to miss, not because they aren't there, but because fewer people are present to see them. In this case, isolation did not cause violence, but it removed protective buffers that often interrupt escalation. As the brothers entered adolescence, reports show an obsessive interest in mass violence and notoriety. This wasn't casual curiosity. It reflected preoccupation with infamy, fixation on historical acts of violence, distorted thinking about legacy and recognition. This is a key psychological point. When adolescents fuse identity with notoriety, morality becomes secondary to visibility. The major psychological shift in this case was not sudden rage. It was the moment ideation became structured planning. Fantasy moved from abstract thoughts into organized intention. Beliefs solidified, internal narratives became external objectives. This shift often occurs quietly, without outward emotional explosions, making it especially dangerous and difficult to detect. Planning reflects cognitive commitment. At this stage, the brothers were no longer debating right and wrong. They had resolved moral conflicts internally. On the night of July 22, 2015, the Bever brothers carried out a planned attack inside their family home. Both parents, David and April Bever, were killed, along with 3 younger siblings, Daniel, Christopher, and Victoria. 2 siblings survived, Crystal, who was injured, and their toddler sister Autumn, who was unharmed. This series is not about graphic details. We acknowledge these outcomes as context, but our focus remains on understanding why this night occurred, not the specifics of the violence. Following the incident, emergency services were alerted by Crystal Bever, one of the surviving siblings, who was able to escape the home and call 911 despite being injured. That call mattered. It was not only a request for help, it was an interruption that stopped further loss of life and initiated immediate law enforcement response. Robert and Michael Bever were taken into custody shortly after without incident. From a prevention lens, this moment is significant because it reminds us that even in highly planned situations, outcomes are not inevitable. Intervention, whether through escape, communication, or rapid response, can and does change trajectories. After the Bever brothers were taken into custody, the legal system moved swiftly. Robert Bever, the older brother, was 18 at the time of the incident and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Michael Bever, the younger brother, 16 at the time, was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole once he reaches adulthood. The sentencing reflects how the justice system distinguishes age, culpability, and potential for rehabilitation. From a psychological perspective, these outcomes also illustrate the tension between accountability and developmental context. Adolescents, especially those isolated and cognitively immature, may act with impaired foresight and impulse control. While justice addresses the consequences of their actions, the developmental factors that contributed to the crime are not resolved through sentencing. This case reminds us that legal outcomes close a chapter in terms of accountability, but the lessons for prevention, detection, and adolescent mental health remain critical. This case raises key questions, such as, how does a highly isolated upbringing influence identity, moral reasoning, and empathy? How do sibling relationships reinforce distorted beliefs? What signals indicate ideation moving toward action? How can schools, communities, and mental health systems detect risk early? And how does adolescent impulse control and fixation on notoriety create pathways to violence? These questions shift focus from the act itself to the process leading up to it, which is essential for understanding and prevention. From this case, we can see how isolation, distorted beliefs, and unchecked sibling dynamics created conditions for tragedy, and how early intervention could have changed the outcome. Prevention starts with connection, communication, and community support, giving adolescents safe spaces to express themselves and access guidance. While the Bever brothers' actions were devastating, studying their development reminds us that violence is often the last chapter, not the beginning, and that understanding these patterns can help prevent similar situations in the future. Thank you for watching this episode. I'll see you in the next case study as we continue to explore adolescent trauma and the lessons it teaches us about prevention, development, and mental health.